Have you ever noticed how we can be surrounded by hundreds of people, yet feel completely alone? You open your phone, 2,000 contacts. You open Instagram, hundreds of followers. You post something, 100 likes. But still inside is silence. So often we think loneliness means something's missing. We say, I feel lonely. And our mind immediately starts looking for someone to fill that space: a friend, a partner, a group, a distraction. But the truth is, loneliness isn't the absence of people, it's the absence of presence. Not their presence, yours. Think about it. When was the last time you actually sat with yourself? Without the phone, without the music, without scrolling, without escaping. We keep running away from being alone. But have you ever wondered why? It's not because being alone is scary. It's because in silence, we finally meet the person we've been avoiding the most, ourselves. Let me tell you a small story. There was once a man who lived in a noisy city. Every morning, he'd wake up, rush to work, meet people, attend calls, reply to messages, scroll social media, laugh at memes, and collapse in bed at night, completely drained. But one day the electricity went out. No Wi-Fi, no calls, no TV, just darkness and silence. And for the first time, he sat alone with himself. At first, he felt restless, like something was wrong. Then slowly, he began to notice the sound of his own breath, the racing thoughts in his head, the emotions he had buried for years. He realized that the silence he feared so much was the very thing trying to heal him. That night, he didn't fight the silence. He embraced it. And that moment he understood loneliness wasn't his enemy, it was his mirror. It was showing him everything he needed to face to truly grow. My friends, loneliness is not a punishment, it's a pause. It's the universe saying, hey, you've been listening to too many voices outside. Come back home. Listen to your own. When we sit alone, we start hearing the soft whispers of our soul. And sometimes those whispers guide us to answers we've been searching for in everyone else. But the tragedy is, we've confused presence with crowds. You can be in a room full of people, laughing and talking, and still feel utterly alone inside. And you can be sitting by yourself in a small room, quietly sipping tea, and feel more complete than ever before. Because it's not about how many people are around you, it's about how connected you are to yourself. Loneliness becomes painful when we resist it, when we fight it, label it, and run from it. But the moment we sit still, breathe, and accept it, something magical happens. That same loneliness begins to transform into solitude. And solitude is sacred. It's where creativity is born. It's where clarity grows. It's where strength begins to take shape. Every great soul, a philosopher, an artist, a monk, a scientist, they all had one thing in common. They spent time alone, because when the world goes quiet, your inner world starts to speak. And that's when you begin to understand who you truly are, beyond the noise, beyond the opinions, beyond the likes and comments. So next time you feel lonely, don't rush to escape it. Don't fill it with noise or temporary company or digital distraction. Instead, pause, close your eyes, take a deep breath. Ask yourself, what is this loneliness trying to teach me? Because it's not here to break you, it's here to build you. And maybe, just maybe, loneliness isn't the absence of love. It's the beginning of self-love. It's the moment life gives you space to meet the most important person in your life, you. Silence has a very strange power. It's invisible, yet it speaks louder than anything in this world. But the problem is, most people are afraid of it. We have become so used to the noise around us, Traffic, music, phones, conversations, Netflix, reels. That silence now feels uncomfortable. Have you ever noticed what happens when everything around you suddenly becomes quiet? You start feeling uneasy. You grab your phone, you open an app, you play a song, you call someone. Because deep down, silence brings us face to face with something we try to avoid, our own thoughts. But here's the truth: silence is not empty, it's full of answers. The sound of silence is not the absence of noise, it's the presence of awareness. It's your soul whispering truths that the world's noise has been drowning out. When life gets too loud, silence becomes your therapy. It's like nature's own medicine for an overworked heart and a restless mind. Let me tell you a small story. A young man once went to a wise monk and said, "Master, my life feels chaotic. I can't find peace. I keep feeling lonely and lost." The monk smiled and took him near a calm lake. He asked the young man to look into the water, but the lake was full of ripples. "What do you see?" asked the monk. The young man said, "I can't see anything clearly. The water is disturbed." The monk said nothing. He waited quietly. After a few minutes, the ripples began to fade and the water became still. "Now what do you see?" The young man said softly, "I see my reflection." The monk smiled again and said, "That's life. When your mind is noisy, you can't see who you are. But when you let silence settle in, you begin to see yourself clearly." That's the beauty of silence. It heals not by giving you something new, but by revealing what was always there. The noise outside confuses us, the silence within guides us. Every time we step into silence, we give our soul a chance to breathe. You start noticing the things you never did before: the sound of your own breath, the beating of your heart, the rhythm of your thoughts. You realize how powerful it is to just be. In silence, you meet your truth. You discover that the pain you've been avoiding is not your enemy, it's your messenger. That the sadness you've been hiding is not weakness, it's the doorway to understanding yourself. Silence gives you space to listen to these parts of yourself without judgment. It helps you process what words cannot. We live in a world where everyone wants to be heard, but very few are willing to listen, especially to themselves. When was the last time you sat in silence, not to plan, not to think, but just to feel? Just to be with yourself. You see, silence doesn't mean nothing is happening. Silence is where the real transformation begins. Just like a seed grows underground in quiet darkness before it breaks the soil to become a tree, our growth too begins in silence. Sometimes, when you're going through pain, you don't need advice, you don't need noise, you just need silence. You need that stillness where your heart can slowly rearrange its broken pieces. When words can't explain what you're feeling, silence becomes your best friend. There's something divine about silence. It's where prayer happens without words. It's where gratitude blossoms without expression. It's where peace is born without reason. The more time you spend in silence, the more you begin to understand that peace was never something outside you. It was waiting patiently inside, behind the noise of your fears, your thoughts, your worries. Silence is the sound of healing. Every deep wound needs quiet to close. Every confused mind needs stillness to see. Every restless heart needs a pause to feel. When you stop filling the emptiness with distraction, you allow peace to flow naturally. It's like tuning your inner instrument to the right frequency. So, don't be afraid of silence. Don't run away from it. Sit with it. Let it wrap around you like a warm blanket after a long storm. Because silence doesn't mean you're alone. It means you're in the presence of something sacred. It means your soul is whispering, She, I'm trying to heal you. And when that happens, when you start to embrace silence instead of fearing it, something beautiful changes inside you. You stop reacting to every noise of the world. You stop chasing attention. You stop craving company. You begin to feel peaceful, calm, grounded. Because once you've heard the voice of your own soul in silence, no amount of noise can ever control you again. One of the biggest reasons people today feel lonely, restless, or lost is because we're living in a world that constantly tells us, you're not enough until someone else says you are. We measure our worth in likes, comments, followers, and reactions. We post something online, and if people appreciate it, we feel happy. If they don't, we start doubting ourselves. Isn't that strange? Our peace is now in someone else's hands, hands that don't even know what's going on inside our heart. I once met a young girl after a session. She looked perfect. Confident smile, stylish clothes, bright energy. But when everyone left, she came to me quietly and said, Sir, I don't know what's wrong with me. People tell me I'm doing great, but every night I feel empty. I asked her, Why do you think that is? She said, Maybe because I'm trying so hard to be liked by everyone that I've forgotten what I actually like. Her words hit me deeply. You see, we are so busy impressing the world that we've lost the joy of expressing ourselves. Validation is a sweet poison. At first, it feels nice. It gives a high, a sense of belonging. But slowly it traps you. You start depending on it. You post because you want to be noticed, not because you want to share. You talk because you want to be heard, not because you want to connect. You live for applause, not for purpose. And the day the applause stops, your happiness disappears too. My friends, that's not living, that's performing. And life is not a stage, it's a journey. You're not meant to please everyone. You're meant to serve something bigger than everyone's opinions. The day you start giving value instead of seeking validation, your whole energy changes. You stop being a beggar of attention and become a giver of meaning. When you help someone without expecting appreciation, that's real confidence. When you smile at a stranger, not to be noticed but to spread kindness, that's real peace. When you share something because it might inspire someone, not because it might get likes, that's real purpose. Think about it. The sun rises every morning, shining brightly, whether we notice it or not. The flower blooms even when nobody is there to admire it. The river flows whether someone praises it or not. Nature doesn't wait for validation because it knows its value. That's the same truth for you. You are not valuable because someone says you are. You are valuable because you exist. We live in an age of mirrors, phones, cameras, screens. But we've forgotten to look into the real mirror, the one inside us. That mirror doesn't show your face, it shows your faith. It reflects not your image, but your intention. When you start seeing yourself through that mirror, you don't need likes because you already like yourself. You see, people's opinions are like the weather. They keep changing. One day you're their favorite, the next day you're forgotten. But when your worth comes from what you give, no change can shake you. Because givers never run out of peace, only seekers do. Let me share something very real. The loneliest people are often those who appear most connected. Because their connection is digital, not emotional. Their hearts are full of Wi-Fi, but empty of warmth. You can have thousands of followers and still not have one true friend who understands your silence. That's what happens when you chase validation instead of giving value. When you start giving a smile, kindness, advice, help, encouragement, something beautiful happens. You stop counting how much you're getting back. You start feeling full. You start realizing that happiness doesn't come from attention, it comes from contribution. The world doesn't need more people trying to be famous. It needs more people trying to be useful. And the best part, when you start focusing on giving value, validation naturally follows. Not because you need it, but because people feel it. They feel your sincerity, your authenticity, your goodness. People can sense the difference between a soul that's trying to impress and a soul that's trying to express. The first creates competition, the second creates connection. You were not born to prove. You were born to improve yourself and the lives around you. When you stop living for approval, you start living for purpose. And purpose is powerful. It fills the same space that loneliness once occupied. So, next time you post, speak, or act, ask yourself, am I doing this to be seen or to serve? Because the first one fades when the applause stops. But the second one, that gives you peace that no one can take away. Validation fades fast, but value lasts forever. You can spend your whole life trying to make others like you, or you can spend it making others' lives better. The choice is yours. One will leave you empty, the other will make your heart full. And remember, when you give without expecting anything back, life has a beautiful way of giving it all back in abundance. Not through likes, but through light. Through the quiet satisfaction that whispers, you did something good today. And that whisper, my friends, is worth more than 1,000 claps. You know, one of the most beautiful but misunderstood gifts life gives us is the phase when we are alone. Most people fear that phase. They think being alone means being weak, unwanted, or forgotten. But the truth is, some of the strongest people you will ever meet are the ones who learn to stand in silence, fight their battles in private, and rise again, even when no one was watching. Strength doesn't come from the noise of applause, it grows in the quiet corners of solitude. When the crowd is around, it's easy to feel confident. Everyone is cheering, everyone is supportive. But what happens when the lights go out, when the claps fade, and when no one is there to say, you can do it? That's when your true strength begins to awaken, because real strength is not tested in the presence of people. It's built in their absence. I remember once hearing a story about a bamboo tree. You plant it, water it every day, and for years, nothing happens. No growth, no leaves, no visible sign of progress. It just sits there beneath the soil, hidden. Many people give up thinking it's dead, but after years of invisible growth, suddenly one day it shoots up, 80 feet tall, in a few weeks. Did it grow in those few weeks? No. It was growing all along, but underground. It was building roots, strengthening its foundation, preparing for what was coming. That's exactly what loneliness does to us. When you feel isolated, when no one notices your struggle, remember, you are growing roots. You are building emotional muscles that no one can see yet, but one day they'll carry you higher than you ever imagined. Crowds may give you comfort, but loneliness gives you character. When you're alone, you start understanding your fears, your dreams, your triggers, your strengths. You start to know yourself not as the world defines you, but as you truly are. That kind of self-knowledge is power. Because once you know who you are, the world can no longer tell you who to be. Many people want to become strong, but they don't want to face discomfort. They want confidence but avoid challenge. They want growth but fear loneliness. But my friends, growth and loneliness walk hand in hand. Every butterfly once sat alone inside a dark cocoon. Every diamond was once just a piece of coal, buried deep underground, under immense pressure. Every great leader, artist, thinker, they all faced seasons of loneliness that shaped them. Because it is in those quiet, unseen moments that greatness is born. Let me tell you a simple truth. Comfort never created strength. When you're surrounded by people who agree with you, applaud you, support you, you might feel good, but you're not growing. Growth happens when you're tested, when you sit alone and ask yourself, what am I doing with my life? Who am I becoming? Why am I here? These questions only appear when the noise around you disappears. Sometimes life separates you from the crowd, not to punish you, but to prepare you. Because what you build in solitude cannot be shaken by the world. It's like a tree that grows strong roots in the storm. Once it has survived that no wind can uproot it. The time you spend alone is your training ground, your inner gym. You lift the weights of patience, endurance, and faith. You learn to motivate yourself, comfort yourself, and believe in yourself. Not because someone told you to, but because you had no choice but to. There's a quiet dignity in walking through loneliness and coming out stronger. It's when you stop saying, why is no one there for me? And start saying, I'm there for myself. That shift, that moment when you realize you are your own support system, that's when strength truly begins. And ironically, when you reach that stage, people start being drawn to you again. Because strong people attract others, not out of need, but out of presence. Sometimes God or life takes everyone away from you for a while so you can meet yourself. So you can learn that your happiness, peace, and confidence were never meant to depend on anyone else. That's when you stop begging for attention and start building intention. You stop seeking comfort and start building courage. You stop waiting for help and start becoming your own help. And you know the beautiful part, when you come out of that lonely phase, you don't come out empty. You come out wiser, calmer, stronger. You become someone who doesn't panic when people leave, because you've already learned to survive without them. You don't fear silence anymore, because you've already befriended it. You don't crave validation anymore, because you already know your worth. So, if you're going through a season where it feels like no one understands you, no one is checking on you, or no one is standing beside you, don't curse that phase. Respect it. It's building you in ways the crowd never could. This loneliness is like a forge. The fire might burn, but it's shaping you into something unbreakable. When life isolates you, don't see it as rejection. See it as direction. Life is pulling you away from noise so you can discover your own voice. It's removing people who distract you so you can focus on what defines you. It's taking you through silence so you can develop strength that no chaos can ever destroy. One day, when you look back, you'll realize the times you thought were your weakest were actually your strongest. The moments you cried alone were the moments your soul was stretching. The days you doubted yourself were the days your spirit was training. And the strength you carry today, that calm confidence, that inner peace, it didn't come from comfort. It came from courage. So, don't fear being alone. Don't see it as a punishment. See it as a preparation, because life doesn't build warriors in crowds. It builds them in caves. And when you walk out of that cave, stronger, wiser, more peaceful, you'll thank that loneliness for being your greatest teacher. There's a big difference between being alone and feeling lonely, but sadly, most people don't realize it. The two may look the same from the outside, but inside, they are worlds apart. Being alone is a situation, a physical state. But feeling lonely is an emotional experience, a state of mind. You can be sitting in a room full of people, surrounded by laughter and conversation, and still feel utterly disconnected. And at the same time, you can be sitting by yourself in silence, completely alone, and yet feel peaceful, fulfilled, and whole. The difference lies not in who is around you, but in what is within you. You see, loneliness is not always about the absence of people. It's about the absence of connection. Not with others, but with yourself. When you don't feel connected to your own heart, your own purpose, your own inner world, no number of people can make you feel complete. You can have friends, family, colleagues, and still feel empty because your inner world is craving something deeper. Understanding, stillness, truth. Being alone, however, is not a problem. It's simply a space, a pause, an opportunity to reconnect. The problem begins when we attach fear to that space. I once met a man who told me, "I hate being alone. I always need someone to talk to. When I'm by myself, my mind starts overthinking." And I told him, "You don't hate being alone. You just don't feel comfortable with your own thoughts yet, because that's what loneliness really is. The discomfort of meeting your own mind. When we haven't learned to make peace with our thoughts, silence feels like an enemy. But when we learn to understand our thoughts, when we learn to observe instead of fear them, that same silence becomes our greatest friend." Let's imagine for a moment that your mind is like a room. When people are around, the room is filled with noise, voices, laughter, distractions. But when everyone leaves, you suddenly notice the things that were always there but went unnoticed. The dust, the broken furniture, the creaking floor. Loneliness is like that. It reveals the things within us that we've ignored. It shows us our wounds, our insecurities, our fears. Most people don't want to see those things, so they run. They fill the silence with noise, phone calls, social media, entertainment, anything to avoid being alone with themselves. But if you just sit quietly in that room long enough, you'll begin to clean it. You'll start fixing what's broken. You'll start dusting off the corners of your mind that have been neglected. And slowly, that room, your inner world, becomes a peaceful home. That's when being alone stops feeling lonely. Loneliness drains you, but being alone restores you. Loneliness says, "No one is here for me." Being alone says, "I am here for me." One comes from lack, the other from love. Loneliness makes you dependent. Being alone makes you independent. Loneliness fears silence. Being alone embraces it. When you truly understand the difference, you'll never see solitude as sadness again. You'll see it as strength. The world teaches us that connection only happens when we're with others. But some of the deepest connections happen in solitude. It's when you're alone that you start connecting with your purpose, your dreams, your values. You start to hear your own voice, a voice that often gets drowned out when you're constantly surrounded by others. That inner voice is your compass. It tells you what truly matters to you, what feels right, what direction you should take. But you can't hear it in chaos, you can only hear it in calm. There's a saying, if you can't enjoy your own company, why should anyone else? It sounds simple, but it's powerful. If you can't sit peacefully with yourself for even a few minutes, that means you're trying to escape something within. But whatever you run from will always follow you until you face it. Being alone gives you that chance to face, to understand, and to heal. I remember a time when I used to confuse the two myself. Whenever I was alone, I would feel restless. I'd think, something's missing. I need to call someone. I need to go out. But one day, while sitting alone by a lake, I just watched the water, completely still, reflecting the sky. And in that quietness, I realized nothing was missing. Everything I was seeking, peace, calm, contentment, was already inside me. I just never gave myself the silence to see it. That day, being alone felt sacred. I didn't feel lonely anymore. I felt connected to nature, to life, to myself. When you start enjoying your own company, everything changes. You stop chasing people. You stop depending on attention. You stop fearing silence. You begin to move with grace. You become your own best friend, your own source of peace. And then, even when others leave, you don't break because your peace was never borrowed, it was built. Being alone is an opportunity to recharge. Just like your phone needs to be unplugged from everything to charge properly, your mind sometimes needs to disconnect from the world to reconnect with itself. When you do that, you return to others more centered, more loving, more grounded. You stop clinging to people out of fear and start connecting with them out of freedom. So, don't confuse being alone with being lonely. One is a punishment you give yourself, the other is a gift life gives you. One drains you because you resist it, the other empowers you because you embrace it. When you learn to sit with yourself without judgment, without distraction, you'll realize that being alone isn't the absence of love, it's the beginning of self-love. And when you reach that point, when your peace no longer depends on who stays or who leaves, that's when you've truly understood the art of being alone without feeling lonely. That's when you walk into a room full of people, not to fill your emptiness, but to share your fullness. And that, my friends, is real strength, to stand alone and still feel complete. You know, we spend so much of our time trying to connect with people, with work, with the world, but very rarely do we pause to connect with the one person who stays with us till the end ourselves. We have become experts at building connections outward, but complete beginners when it comes to connecting inward. We know how to charge our phones when their batteries die, but we don't know how to recharge our minds when our energy fades. We know how to refresh our screens, but we forget how to refresh our souls. And that's why, my friends, so many people feel exhausted, anxious, and lost, because they're running on empty, disconnected from their own inner source. To reconnect with yourself daily isn't a luxury. It's a necessity. It's like breathing. You don't just breathe once in the morning and expect to stay alive all day. You breathe constantly. In the same way, self-connection isn't a one-time event. It's a continuous practice. It's about coming home to yourself again and again, every single day, no matter how noisy or busy the world becomes. When you wake up in the morning, before the world enters your mind through notifications, messages, or worries, take a moment just for yourself. Sit in silence, close your eyes, and ask, how am I feeling today? You'd be surprised how rarely we ask ourselves that question. We ask others, how are you? But we rarely turn that same compassion inward. Yet that single moment of awareness can shift your entire day. Because the way you begin your morning is the way you carry your energy into the world. There was a time when I used to wake up and immediately check my phone. Within seconds, I would see news, messages, updates, and suddenly my mind would be crowded even before I stepped out of bed. One day I decided to change that habit. I left my phone in another room and began my mornings with stillness. Sometimes I would meditate, sometimes I would write in a journal, sometimes I would just sit quietly and watch the sunrise. Those 15 minutes of silence felt like meeting an old friend I had ignored for years, myself. And from that moment, my days began to feel lighter, calmer, more centered. Because I realized something: you can't control the world outside, but you can shape the world inside. Reconnecting with yourself doesn't have to be complicated. It can be as simple as taking a walk alone and listening to the sound of your footsteps. It can be sitting by a window and watching the rain fall. It can be writing down your thoughts at night. Not to post, not to share, but to understand. It's those little moments of mindfulness that slowly rebuild your connection with your inner peace. The truth is, the world constantly pulls you outward. It keeps you distracted with goals, expectations, competition, comparison. You're told that success means being busy, but nobody tells you that being busy without being balanced is just another form of burnout. When you don't reconnect with yourself, you start losing touch with what truly matters. You start chasing things you don't even want, living by standards that aren't even yours, trying to please people who may not even care. But when you reconnect inwardly, suddenly everything becomes clear again. You remember your purpose, you realign your priorities, you stop running in circles and start walking with direction. Sometimes we wait for others to understand us. We say, "No one gets me." But ask yourself, do you get you? Do you spend time understanding your own emotions, your own triggers, your own needs? Because when you truly start understanding yourself, you stop depending on others to validate your worth. You stop feeling lost because you know exactly where your center is. You stop seeking peace from people who can't give it because you already have it within. Think about it. We charge our phones every night. Why? Because if we don't, they stop working properly. But what about your inner battery? You keep giving energy to others, to your job, your family, your responsibilities. But how often do you stop to recharge yourself? When you reconnect daily, you restore that inner energy. You don't wait for weekends or vacations to feel alive. You find peace in small daily rituals. One of the simplest ways to reconnect is through gratitude. Every night before sleeping, instead of scrolling through social media, try recalling 3 things you're grateful for that day, no matter how small. Maybe it was a smile from a stranger, a good meal, or simply the fact that you made it through the day. Gratitude shifts your focus from what's missing to what's present. And the more you focus on what's good, the more grounded and joyful you feel. Meditation, prayer, journaling, deep breathing, these are all ways to reconnect. But even beyond techniques, it's about awareness. It's about pausing in the middle of your day and asking, am I present right now, or am I lost in worry? It's about noticing your thoughts and gently bringing yourself back. It's about catching yourself when you're being too harsh on yourself and saying, it's okay, I'm trying my best. That's connection. That's love. You see, the world outside will never stop being loud. There will always be deadlines, messages, demands, opinions. But when you take time to reconnect with yourself, the noise outside starts losing its power. You begin to move slower but with more purpose. You speak less but with more meaning. You feel lighter yet stronger. Because now, instead of reacting to the world, you respond from peace. There's a saying I love: almost everything will work again if you unplug it for a few minutes, including you. Sometimes, You just need to step back, breathe, and remind yourself you are not just what you do. You are not just your roles or your achievements. You are a soul, a living being deserving of love, rest, and connection. When you reconnect with yourself daily, loneliness starts to lose its grip on you. You no longer feel like you're missing someone because you found the most important person in your life. You. And when you are deeply connected to yourself, even when you're alone, you're never lonely. You walk through life with quiet confidence, unshaken by chaos, untouched by comparison. So make it a habit, not once in a while, but every single day, to come home to yourself. Before you face the world, meet your own heart. Listen to its whispers. Because when you stay connected to yourself, the world can't disconnect you from peace. You become your own safe place. Calm, centered whole. And that, my friends, is the most beautiful relationship you'll ever build in your life. There is something deeply powerful about the quiet hours when no one is around, when the world slows down, and you find yourself face to face with your own thoughts. Most people fear those moments. They call it loneliness, they call it emptiness. But what if I told you that those very moments are the birthplace of brilliance? What if I told you that when the world turns silent, your creativity wakes up? So many of us keep looking for inspiration in crowded places, in conversations, in noise, when in truth, the deepest ideas, the most soulful art, the truest self-expression come only when you're alone. Loneliness, if embraced, can become a workshop where imagination and purpose quietly come alive. Every great creator, thinker, or inventor in history has had to spend time alone. Solitude isn't just a pause, it's a space where new worlds are built. When there's no one to impress, no one to distract, and no one to compare yourself with, something magical happens. Your authentic self begins to speak. The mind that was filled with outside opinions finally gets room to breathe. You start seeing things differently, thinking freely, feeling deeply. The canvas of your mind clears, and suddenly, ideas begin to flow like rivers after rain. I remember hearing about how some of the most timeless works of art and innovation were born in isolation. Beethoven composed symphonies in silence when his world had gone deaf. Van Gogh painted masterpieces in solitude, with no applause and no recognition. Newton discovered the laws of gravity sitting alone under a tree. Even our modern breakthroughs, writers, musicians, philosophers, all of them have this one thing in common. They weren't afraid to be alone. They understood that solitude isn't a punishment, it's the price of creation. And that price, when paid with patience, gives birth to beauty that moves the world. But sadly, we live in a generation that has forgotten how to be still. We fear stillness as if silence will swallow us. We keep ourselves busy not because we have so much to do, but because we're terrified of facing our inner world. We fill every gap in our day with screens, scrolling endlessly, checking updates that don't even matter, all to avoid that one quiet moment where the truth might whisper, "There's more to you than this." Yet, when we finally surrender to that silence, something profound happens. Loneliness begins to melt, and creativity begins to rise. The energy that was once trapped in worry and overthinking transforms into inspiration and insight. The mind that was tired of pretending finally begins to imagine again. The heart that felt heavy begins to express. That's when poetry is written, songs are born, ideas take shape, and lives are changed. You see, creativity is not an external act, it's an internal awakening. It's not about producing something for the world. It's about discovering something within you. But that discovery doesn't happen in chaos, it happens in calm. It happens when you stop talking and start listening, not to others, but to your soul. Every one of us has a voice inside, a spark, a creative pulse that wants to express itself. Maybe through art, maybe through kindness, maybe through ideas, maybe through leadership. But that voice can only be heard in silence. That spark can only grow when you stop running and start reflecting. Let me share something personal. There was a time when I felt completely stuck. Nothing inspired me, nothing moved me. I kept looking for motivation outside, videos, books, people, achievements. But the more I searched, the emptier I felt. One day, I decided to just sit with that emptiness instead of running from it. I sat quietly, with no music, no distractions, no plan. At first, my mind resisted. It wanted to check messages, think about problems, do anything but stay still. But slowly, after a while, something shifted. I began to feel lighter. Thoughts began to settle. And in that stillness, a small idea emerged. Something pure, something mine. That idea later grew into something beautiful, something that gave meaning not only to me, but to others too. And that's when I realized creativity doesn't come from noise, it comes from surrender. Loneliness becomes your greatest gift when you learn to use it as a canvas instead of a cage. Don't see your alone time as empty space, see it as fertile ground. When the soil looks bare, that's when seeds are quietly growing underneath. When your life feels still, it doesn't mean nothing is happening. It means something deep is forming, slowly, silently, powerfully. Give that silence time to bloom. Every time you feel lonely, pick up a pen. Write what you feel. Draw something. Sing something. Walk somewhere new. Do something that lets your soul breathe. That's not just creativity. That's healing. When your pain transforms into art, your loneliness transforms into meaning. Every piece of expression you create from that space becomes a bridge, connecting your heart to the hearts of others who feel the same but can't express it. And that's how your loneliness ends up healing not only you, but others too. Loneliness gives you something the crowd never can: originality. When you are surrounded by people all the time, you start to mirror their thoughts, their beliefs, their habits. But when you are alone, you begin to rediscover your own voice. You begin to remember who you were before the world told you who to be. That's the root of creativity. Authenticity, the courage to be yourself, to think differently, to express freely. When you look at it this way, you realize that loneliness is not a dark tunnel, but a sacred studio, a quiet space where your mind and soul collaborate to create something divine. So instead of fighting your alone moments, use them. Use them to explore, to create, to grow. Sit with your feelings, let them move through you, and then let them come out in a form. Words, art, ideas, service, whatever feels natural to you. Because expression is how the soul breathes. One day, you look back and see that the times when you felt most isolated were actually the times when you were becoming most inspired. That those long, quiet nights were not wasted. They were working on you, shaping you, preparing you to bring something beautiful into the world. You'll realize that what you thought was loneliness was actually the call of creativity, asking you to look within. So, if you find yourself in solitude, don't rush to escape it. Sit in, feel it, let it speak. Write your thoughts, sing your pain, build something small, dream something big. Because that's where your true self hides. In the quiet spaces where no one's watching, where no one's judging, where it's just you and your imagination. And once you learn to turn your loneliness into creativity, You'll never fear being alone again because you'll know that solitude is not the absence of people, it's the presence of purpose. And maybe that's what life is trying to teach you through loneliness. That inside you lives an artist, a thinker, a dreamer, waiting patiently for you to listen. All it takes is a little silence, a little courage, and a little faith in yourself. Once you find that, your loneliness doesn't remain a wound anymore. It becomes your workshop, your sanctuary, your source of light.